Welcome to the Nebraska Land Bank podcast.
I'm Ty.
I'm David.
I'm Danielle, and we're your hosts. In each episode, we'll sit down with local guests to highlight the incredible people and stories that make our community unique.
From finance to sports, community events to local businesses, we've got it all covered. Join us as we dive into the heart of our community.
This is the Nebraska Land Bank podcast, always community-minded.
Every voice.
Every topic.
Every time.
So turn the volume up, settle in,
and let's talk Nebraska Land.
Well, friends, welcome back to the Nebraska Land Bank podcast along with Danielle Remus and Ty Lucas. I'm David Fudge, and we get to talk about something today that I know a little something about. Not a ton, but a little something about. But I want to start by setting this up this way, and I want you to think back, the two of you, on your high school days and how you consumed media back then. And Ty, I'll start with you, because used to be we'd go to the library and at the old North Platte High School, and there would be racks and racks of newspapers and magazines and all that sort of stuff. You don't see that much anymore?
No, I mean, I think we were in the days of Encyclopedia Britannica and newspapers on sticks and all those fun things, and lots of magazine subscriptions. I was in college when AOL hit and the original dial-up internet. I was in college when I got my first email address. So, yeah, I think, I miss a lot of those physical newspapers.
Yeah, no kidding. Danielle, you were a little behind us, but did they still have those resources when you were in high school? And when did you see those kind of start fading out?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I mean, I remember using encyclopedias for homework. I still have a set of old encyclopedias, by the way. I'll keep them. I think it's cool. But the first thing when you said, how do you consume media, the first thing that popped into my head was Rick Dees in the top 40.
We're not going to talk about when KELN was going to die and then it came back secretly that one day.
No,
right?
we won't do that. I was
that.
actually part of some of that stuff back in the day. But speaking of, we've got a couple of friends in the building today that know a little something about this. Lewis Carlini from Eagle Radio. Lewis has got a long history in media. He and I have worked together a couple different times. And Joan von Kampen from the North Platte Telegraph, who's been in that industry for a long time. I won't say how long, because I wouldn't do that to a friend. But the experience at the World Herald, if I remember correctly, and I'm now the editor of the North Platte Telegraph. So welcome, both of you. And we like to start with an icebreaker question. And so I'll put it to both of you. Give me the most memorable news story you've ever covered. And I don't care who goes first. Boy, Joan's really thinking on this one. I can see the gears turn.
No, I'm having a deep memory. I was on the copy desk at the World Herald one afternoon when the police scanner went off, that there was a shooter at Westroads Mall.
Oh.
So I was about 15 feet away from the scanner when it went off, and everyone around the room went quiet, because we didn't believe what we had just heard. Mm-hmm. And I was one of the Page One editors that night, and so my other memory is of being at a long table with printouts of all of the pages we had to fill, and lists of stories, and figuring out what was going to go on what page. But just the sound of that scanner call has stayed with me.
Yeah, long time. Lou, how about you?
Well, mine goes back way long. You wish something else would have happened that stuck in my memory, but it was 1987. It was the first time the TV station had gone actually live with a microwave from the Wild West Arena when President Reagan came to visit.
Sure.
So it was like, woo, we're really big time here, and all the NBC people were in town. I actually gave Andrea Mitchell a ride from the airport to the arena, and then ran camera at the arena for the actual live shot when Ronald Reagan was here. So it was a pretty big deal. K-Or was there. I remember that. Kim Baxter Chance sang at this event at the Wild West Arena, and it was just pretty big at that time for me, because I was just, pretty much right out of school. But this is our first big deal, and that kind of stuck with me with that story.
Yeah, very cool.
I'd love to hear from both of you just kind of what's your story? How did you get started in media? How long have you been doing it?
Well, I've been in media my entire life. I was kind of born into it, obviously. So my dad was in television in Evansville, Indiana, where I was born. And then he had an opportunity to come manage and co-own the TV station in North Platte, 1968. So I was already born. Yeah. No, I was 3. So we kind of just grew up in the business. I have 7 other siblings. And at one time at the TV station, out of a staff of 30, there was 11 Carlinis at the station. So my brother married the news director. My mom and dad were working there. And we all just kind of, started by, shoveling snow. Then you took out trash. You moved up to the bathrooms. You ran studio camera. Just every facet in a small market. KNOP was the second smallest, and I believe still is the second smallest market in the nation. So directed thousands of newscasts, worked with David a couple times, all the way through those years. And so it actually full-time career, I've been 40 plus years in broadcasting. So it's taken me from production to management to sales to management and those type of things. Now with Eagle, I've been there for 10 years now. So it's hard to believe that October 10th, I'll be there 10 years. So pretty cool.
I don't mean to interrupt real quick, but Lewis, why has North Platte been able to maintain a TV market and be one of the smallest over time? I mean, I'm sure it would have been easy along the way for somebody to want to roll that up, but why have we been fortunate that way?
I can speak in my time that was there. I know that we were 100% local. I mean, we gave everything, let nightly news cover the national things. Some of the regional stuff that had, impact to our area, we would do that, but I would say 90% of the newscasts, weather, sportscasts, obviously were local, and then your advertisers understand that. So without the help of the advertiser, you don't stay on the air. So it's kind of a full circle, and then people start to watch, and you see the numbers, and you start seeing second smallest market in the nation, but we have the number 1 ratings in the nation because people are zoomed in to what we're doing because of our local connection to everybody. I mean, something's happening, big or small, we try to do as much as we could to get them some airtime.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Joan, back to how did you get started?
All right. Well, I started out on my high school newspaper in Scottsbluff. And before I even knew that I wanted to do this for a living, my teacher signed me up for a what do you need to know if you're going to go to the UNL College of Journalism at a fall workshop. So I went to UNL for college, where I met my future husband, whose byline people recognize around here, Todd von Kampen. He was working at the North Platte Telegraph when we started dating, and I was a senior in college. I interviewed for the Telegraph before I graduated, but I also had a job offer from the Des Moines Register, which was one of the flagship papers for Gannett. I dragged him away from Nebraska so I could take that job right after we got married. And then 3 years after our first baby was born, we got a call out of the blue from the Scottsbluff Star-Herald in my hometown. They had an opening for a reporter and a copy editor, and so we moved back home to Scottsbluff. We were there for 4 years. Then we came up here. We had an opportunity to work at the Telegraph. So we worked at the Telegraph for 2 years. And then I left for a job at the World Herald. But as I left, I said to our publisher at the time, I'm going to learn the things that I still need to learn, but you'll know where to find me. We spent 19 years in Omaha, and I spent most of that time on the copy desk of the World Herald. But the last 4 years, I was the World Herald News Service Manager. I was the liaison between the World Herald and our papers in western Iowa and across Nebraska. So I got to know all of the markets from Grand Island to Scottsbluff pretty well during that time. And my parting comment to the publisher here, I was prescient, but it happened a whole different way because the World Herald by then owned the Telegraph. And one day they approached me and said, would you like to go back to North Platte as the editor? And I said, you're asking if I want to go home, because western Nebraska is and always will be home. So I came back in 2016 as editor. Todd joined me on staff a couple of years later. 2 years ago in 2022, the company asked me to take on the Scottsbluff Star-Herald and its associated weeklies and also the Lexington Clipper-Herald. So I'm now the Western Nebraska regional editor for Lee Enterprises, but I'm still based here in North Platte, but I get to go home to Scottsbluff frequently.
Yeah, cool. As I think about how the world has changed in media, maybe no single way that media gets distributed has been impacted more than newspaper, really, over the course of the last 20 years. I mean, I can remember a time when circulation was nearly a paper for every other resident, I think it was, in Lincoln County, and that's slowly dwindled over the years. And how has the industry tried to adapt? How has that gone? It just feels a little bit like, gracious, we're losing. So Ty referenced it a little bit ago. Some of us still like a physical newspaper, and those are a little tough to find these days.
And I still love a print newspaper too, but we are going where the readers want to get their information. We are online, whereas when I started out in the business, you chose, are you going into newspaper journalism? Are you going into radio? Are you going into TV? And now the answer is all of the above. Mm-hmm. Yes, we still have a print product, but we have hundreds of thousands of page views a month online. That's where our readers want the content. And instead of one nightly deadline, we have a deadline as soon as news happens, and we can get it online. I still say that I'd rather be right than first. So if we have a story, we want to make sure the facts are right before it goes online. And I know that's also true of our TV and radio friends here in our local market, where it's about putting forward trusted information. But we still have the paper. By far the biggest change we've gone through since I've returned to North Platte was the switch from being a 6-day print publication to being a 7-day online e-edition plus 3 days in print each week. So,
and that's fairly recent.
It was just a year ago.
Yeah.
So that's still something that we are adapting to, figuring out where news appears first. Obviously, individual stories go online first before they appear either in the print edition or the e-edition. But making those decisions about which audience we're targeting that information for is a part of every conversation, and adding videos to stories because many readers enjoy getting their information that way. I'm more of a printed word person, and that's been a huge shift in mindset for me.
Sure.
How about you, Lewis? What's the most significant changes you've observed in kind of the media landscape?
I think along a lot with what Joan's saying too is just the content has switched from, everything seems digital now. It's all, and how quick can I get it? Is it on a social platform? And there's just so many different ways to get it. That's been the biggest change for me. Is like, back in the day it was ABC, NBC, CBS. You had one paper and maybe a radio station. Now it's like, you turn on, well, just look at your cable channel, or even if you stream now, which everybody's kind of doing that as well, there's thousands of places to go to get the content specifically what you're looking for. So I think that's been the biggest change. There's just so many more outlets. And that's what holds us true to what we're trying to do and have been trying to do for the last 40 years, is keep it as local as possible, because we've got something unique that somebody in Omaha, we want to keep our people here and interested in what we're doing locally. So that's our main thrust.
All right, I've got a question I've been just dying to ask both of you guys. I've been looking forward to this. So in my mind, the press and media has always been one of the great pillars of America, the way our government works and journalistic integrity with accurate news reporting plays a huge role in that. I mean, I'm an elected official locally on our city council, and there's an accountability and an information sharing that's tremendously important, I think, in our country. In my mind, you still have news like on the front page of the paper in the second, and then I get to the editorial section, and then I can maybe hear what one of you guys thinks personally about something. But there's kind of a division between doing my journalism job and doing my opinion job. Nationally, that has changed tremendously. And the crossover between journalism and opinion is pretty murky, and especially your national sources. One thing I deeply appreciate about our local media sources is I feel like you guys still live by the way I see those things. But I want to know what you think about that. And do you think it's murky nationally, or how do you see this environment, journalistic integrity versus more editorial opinion type stuff? If I don't care which one of you guys wants to go first. Lewis, you want to take this one first?
I think it's super murky on the national level. I mean, you can just see it. You watch CNN, you watch Fox. There's an agenda that both are striving for, and it's not what we do here is I don't think people want my opinion. I don't care what I think. I'm just going to give them the honest facts of what is happening in our community and let them form their own opinion. If it's something that's, maybe has some fun flair to it, then I'll give some opinion. But if it's of national importance or even, something above my pay grade, I'm probably not going to comment on and let them. I'm just going to give you the facts and let them decide from there. So I think that's what our team does at the station, because it gets just so that's part of the divide in our country. I feel it's just people have their opinion, and this is my political side, which is my network that I support or whatever, and it's just like, come on, we're all in this together. So it's just cut through the crap and just give them the facts. So that's my thought on that.
Oh, I appreciate your view on that. Joan, how do you see all that?
There is a very bright line between page one and the editorial page. Mm-hmm. We label our opinion. If you're reading our editorial page, you see that we run editorials from other newspapers as well, and they are labeled as where they come from. But our view, our staff opinion, is labeled as our view. And that is the opinion of the Telegraph editorial board, which includes me and my publisher and one other writer. We talk about these topics, and anyone on staff can bring us ideas and thoughts for that. But that opinion is a group opinion. It is not the opinion of just one of us, and it does not impact our coverage of the news on page 1 and page 3 and the other news pages. That's why there's one page that is marked opinion and the rest are not opinion. There are also occasional analysis pieces, and we label those as well.
And I can think of one in general that Todd does quite often, which is the tax analysis that was just done recently. They picked 3 homes in our community, one on the southwest side, one on the north side, and then I forget where the other one is. But I find that really valuable analysis as a taxpayer that I can, and that's the sort of deep dive that newspapers always been able to deliver, and the value I think that newspaper still delivers this day.
It's one of the things that we can do that other media can't, because we have the space and time to do it. It's not something that can be done in a 30-second segment, something that could be done on television with graphics but would be difficult on radio. It's harder to do than it used to be, though, because our staff is much smaller than it used to be. So we're glad that we're able to still provide that depth that many news outlets can't any longer.
You just hit on it, and the first radio staff I joined was KELN in 1989, and there were 21 people in the building over on East 4th Street, and they were pretty evenly divided between on-air staff and sales staff. By the time I left the last time, there were 9 people in the building, and only 2 or 3 of us had anything to do with programming. The rest of it was management and sales. And so I find it interesting, and I'd be interested in your perspective on this, the constant battle to try and do more with less, because you're both doing things that 20 years ago we wouldn't have even thought of doing as a newspaper or radio person or a television reporter. It's almost like the lines have been blurred across the platforms a little bit, but you're trying to do that with a fraction of the staff that we had to work with 25 years ago or 30 years ago when we started in the business. How difficult is that to manage in a time and era where we still have responsibilities to report news accurately and timely, yet we're being asked to do it with a fraction of the resources that we used to do it with.
I think, it started, I've always been evolving like that to begin with. You've always, because you work at a small place, you're going to have multiple hats. But you can even see it in, there used to be a journalist, and now he's a photojournalist. And now current is all multimedia. You got to know all the resources and do all the different things. So,
yeah, when I started in television, there was a reporter and I was a photographer, and then we'd get back and there was somebody who's working the edit bay, and then there was somebody else who would engineer the piece together, and now it's all one person.
Yeah, and that's that reduction of people too, which I see on a larger level. You're saving all this expense without having that many people, and we're getting the same production, and people understand that that's what they're going to have to do. We have 12 on staff at Eagle now in North Platte. So it's we got a good sales staff, and that's one that I don't like to touch a whole lot because that drives your revenue, With that, there's added expense with the more people you have. So, I just think it's always going to be evolving. And if you're not willing to change and evolve, then this isn't the business for you. It's never the same. And that's one of the things I love about it. It's always changing. Yeah, there's days where you're like, gee, I could be doing something else. But, then there's the majority of the days are like, I love what I'm doing. One day I'm recording audio. The next I'm selling something. The next, we're looking at traffic. We're there's an issue at the tower site. Can you go in there and look around, Lewis, at least? Yeah, I can do it. Not my forte, but I'll take pictures and send them to you. But I think that's the beauty of it. It's just always changing, and it's never the same old every day.
I noticed the same thing when I walk into the Telegraph. That entire facility used to be just plumb full of people, and now it's just. And you referenced it. It's just there's a handful of you trying to do the same workload, but it's got to be difficult.
It is, and as Lewis referenced, and you mentioned too, the division of labor. I mean, we have exceptional reporters who also have to take photos. Not everyone has the same visual
skill set.
Yeah. Thank you for the word there. Lots of photographers are not skilled at the language. So everyone's had to learn skills that they're not necessarily comfortable with. The young journalists coming out of the journalism schools, though, they are remarkable because they've grown up in that environment. They think in a multimedia way. And so it's really exciting to be learning from the young people we bring on staff, too. But it's definitely a huge challenge. One of the ways that we continue to keep the quality of the product is because we do have the support of a larger company that we're part of, and we have advantages that we didn't have when we were independently owned, frankly. I mean, if you look at our e-edition on Sunday morning after a Husker game, we're running an entire extra section. We're running the Lincoln Journal-Star's Husker section. Mm-hmm. We could never give that depth of coverage of a Husker game without having those sister papers to help us, which is a huge change in the statewide news environment because all of these newspapers used to be competitors. And now many of us are owned by the same company, and we're all on one team, and we can draw on that shared resource and lean on each other. So we are staying strong by banding together as journalists rather than competing against one another.
I really noticed that not in addition to the content, but the photography as well. Like, for example, after the Husker games and whatnot. That's really interesting about the new college graduates and their training set being different. How do they see, and I'm sure many of them see things differently, but as a general group, how do they see that discussion point of journalism versus opinion and that being murky that we were talking about a little bit ago?
They are taught that line between news and opinion in school. But they, as we all do, Lewis summed it up the best. Yes, it is very murky on the national TV side, because how can you fill a 24/7, the CNN, the Fox News? How do you keep that content fresh all day? I mean, you remember the old headline news? Which was great for, if you wanted the news, but you'd come back an hour later and, there's still that earthquake in...
Wolf Blitzer still talking about it.
Right, right. So
You're right.
Yeah, and so it evolved into these very familiar faces talking all day about politics, and how do you talk about politics all day without veering into opinion? Maybe that's why I don't talk much about politics out in my private life.
No, you're just wise.
That's so interesting how that's all evolved.
I'm super interested to hear, has AI changed your industries, and if so, how?
I think it's changed a lot of different things, because you can pretty much come up with whatever you want. If it's a Chat GPT or whatever that genre is that you're using, it's made everybody a great script writer. I think that's one thing. I'm not a fan of it. Someday I'll buy into it, and it makes your life easier. But I like to have my hands on it, and I can control the destiny of my script that I'm writing. Others are not great script writers, so I think it helps them immensely to be able to have this tool to create a great thing that they take their client. The client says, yeah, that sounds great, or make a few tweaks, and we come back with that. So that's where it's used a lot in our industry right now, and I'm sure at a higher level there's plenty of other things they're using it for. It's the hey Google of anything I want to do. Now it's just taking another step further. Now Google's got Gemini and all those different things that it has to combat that, but it's a whole nother level for sure.
Do you see that being used in your world, Joan?
Our newspaper company has stringent rules about how AI can be used. It's okay to use Otter AI, for instance, to transcribe an interview. It's not okay to use Chat GPT to turn that interview into a news story. There's been some experimentation in the news business with doing sports scores and such using AI, with occasionally embarrassing results. So there's a lot of caution with that. Where we can use ChatGPT or other AI for data analysis or whatever, we will attribute it. There will be a credit line on it saying that this was done using such and so program. We're not doing that at the Telegraph. We're focusing on doing our local news, and Todd really enjoys doing the number crunching on the tax trackers and those sorts of things. So we really haven't delved into that locally. The bigger concern for us is really the possibility that someone could submit a photo, for instance, that has been done by AI. And we have had some trainings on how to spot a fake, and that's not something that we've had to deal with locally, thankfully, at this point.
Yeah. It's a great tool for sure, but as with any tool, it can be abused.
Right, there's some great potential to it, but
some people just like to do that, tweak it.
If you don't mind me asking, what's a national media source, one or two, that each of you guys like and enjoy personally?
Well, I was born an NBC guy, so that stood for nothing but Carlini's back in the day.
Yeah.
But I try to watch the other product, and I just don't have the same feel. And that's I don't know if it's Cradle Catholic, but NBC trained from the very beginning. So those things you just grow up with, and it's my comfort zone right there. But I like to watch Fox. I like to watch. CBS Sunday Morning is my favorite program with Jane Pauley, another NBC.
Old NBC person.
But I love that show, and they go into depth, and it's not, they don't talk about the rigors of war a lot, unless it's very prevalent. But it's always human interest stories that just interest me, and it's like I'll sit there in bed with my coffee, and I got one more story to watch, Holly. So I'm gonna sit here for a bit. So I love that show.
Joan?
I don't watch a lot of TV news. By the time I get home at night, I've pretty much had my fill of news. And I like reading my news, my national news especially, rather than listening to it, because I can take it at my own pace. I can pick and choose which stories I'm gonna read. I read a number of news outlets online, but I mostly focus on reading local and state news these days. And if I watch news on TV, it's our local news station, because at the end of the day, the community news is what I'm most interested in.
Mm-hmm. I see you guys getting involved in community impact events and different things too. I think of like the Big Idea contest a little bit. Lou, you guys are pretty involved with that, haven't you been?
Well, we had Bob Schmidt, who started Eagle Communications, has a Schmidt Foundation, and they give to different communities. And this is one. The Big Idea was one that he's passed away, but as a group, that foundation felt that this was a great opportunity for somebody to build business in your area and keep the local thing rolling. So, we've been doing the Big Idea for 4 or 5 years now, and it's been a good success. I think, you try to have young people come up with ideas to build in your community. That's kind of where we're at with everything. You just want to, grow things here, start, small, or take something over and embellish to a better business or what have you. So Bob Schmidt was a great proponent of local and community, and he does this. The foundation does that in all of our markets. So 6 or 7 other markets between Kansas, Nebraska, Missouri, he's a part of that. So in every community. So pretty cool.
And then, Joan, on that same note, I know you guys get heavily involved in like the Women in Business Forum, and I've seen you a lot with very involved with Miss Nebraska pageant and different things. What are those community impact things that your companies get involved in that nature?
Okay, but for us, it's really about supporting what's happening in the community and letting people know how many things are happening in the community. The Women in Achievement is one of the Telegraph's initiatives that we've done for a number of years, and we're going to continue doing that. The rest of our involvements tend to be an outgrowth of our news coverage. But being part of the community also means doing things in the community, and so sometimes we have a really interesting crossover going on right now. We've had several reporters over the years who have been in community theatrical productions and such. In fact, Ryan Herzog, who recently left the Telegraph, was in a play a few months back at the college. But right now we have the unique position of the Canteen musical that's being prepared for its debut, for its premiere here, which was inspired by the books that the Telegraph did about the Canteen, and which we had reported on early on. Todd, who compiled the 2 Canteen books we've written, went down to Tennessee and saw some of the early development of this musical, and now it's being rehearsed at the Playhouse. And Todd is actually in the cast. So we've made a little exception to our the way we handle our involvements in the community, in that he is also writing some personal columns about the history behind the Canteen, which he's knowledgeable about, and his involvement in the cast in the run-up to this world premiere of the musical. So that's a really exceptional thing. But by and large, our main goal is to be members of the community and telling the community's story. It's always about telling the community's story. It's not our story, it's North Platte's story.
We got a little special taste of the musical here a while back at the bank. The group working on that came and gave us a test of a couple of the songs. What a treat! I didn't even really know about that whole initiative, and now I'm like fired up about it. So it's pretty exciting. Yeah. Do you want to take a little bit of a 90-degree turn here, Danielle?
Yeah, back to kind of the news. We'll break into our Asking for a Friend segment. So there has been recent news of a huge data breach impacting nearly every American. That came out probably sometime in August, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And so one of their recommendations when that news broke was to freeze your credit. The question is, how do you freeze your credit, and then what impact does that have?
Okay, well, first, if somebody wants to freeze their credit, in the United States, there's the three credit bureaus. Okay, you have TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, and each of them you would need to do a freeze with individually. So there's really no effective way to freeze all of them together. So if your goal is to freeze your credit, you need to work with each one of them. Now, the most important thing, if you do that, and I'm not necessarily advocating for it or against it. It really depends on your situation and what helps you sleep at night and how you're using your credit. But you just need to do it in a way to where you can unfreeze it as you need to. And so the biggest pro of freezing your credit is that if somebody wants to establish a credit account in your name, they're going to have a hard time doing that because most lenders and insurance companies today are not going to issue new accounts without checking your credit. So if they get blocked by frozen credit, maybe they'll go on bother somebody else, basically. The thing you have to watch out for with freezing your credit is there is a little bit of a hassle factor. I'm going to lease a car, or I'm writing new even insurance, a life insurance policy or something, and something that requires a credit check. You need to be able to unfreeze it for that party, even if it's just for a half a day or a day, and then refreeze it. But you may need to do that at more than one credit bureau, depending on how they do it. So, like, for example, if we're doing a loan request here, we may just use a TransUnion report. But if you're doing a home mortgage loan, they actually use all three bureaus in a home mortgage loan. So you'd actually have to go do 3 unfreezes and 3 refreezes to effectively apply for a mortgage loan. And so, again, it's really up to protecting yourself, what makes you sleep at night. If you've had experiences, identity theft concerns, anything that has caused red flags, it's definitely a tool. But you can't let it lull you to sleep that protects you from all identity theft. Again, the only thing that does is it freezes somebody from having a vendor check your credit report effectively to open a new account or a new insurance policy or a new credit account. A couple other best practices we'd have, though, whether you choose to freeze or not, is first of all, using alerts on accounts, whether that be large transactions, every transaction. It doesn't take but a few seconds to look at your alerts every day or check your credit or your checking account or your savings account, and just monitoring activity. And password managers. I mean, if our IT director was here today, she would say passwords. They need to be complex. Don't use your dog's name all the time. If you add 321 or 123, take it a little further. So in today's world, make your passwords more complex. Use password managers. There's many good apps and vaults out there you can save your passwords in. And I would tell you password protection is one of the best things you can do to protect yourself in today's world.
There you go. Well, hey, this has been fun. Lewis, Joan, thanks for getting out of your comfort zone and letting us putting you behind the microphones today. I know that's not comfortable in your worlds, but thank you very much for being here.
Well, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Oh, you bet. That wraps up our episode on the evolving landscape of media in North Platte. As always, if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe and share it with your friends. Visit our website at nebraskalandbank.com/podcast. And, of course, remember, we're member FDIC.